Hello, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. This is part 2 of the Singer Featherweight tutorial where I am going to show you the full restoration process that I go through on a Singer Featherweight. We are still taking parts off of this featherweight, and our goal is to remove pretty much everything, clean it, and then put it back on the machine and set it to the factory settings so that the machine will sew properly for you. Today, we're going to actually be working in the nose of this machine. So our goal is to remove the parts within the nose, which will be the needle bar, the presser bar, and the tension pin releasing lever. Then we will be able to clean them and put them back on the machine, set the needle bar height, set the presser bar height, and so on. But today's video is just going to be how to remove these 3 things: needle bar, presser bar, tension pin releasing lever. If you want, before you start, you can spray the parts with some penetrating oil. If you're worried about getting that oil onto the finish of your machine, which in my experience, this brand does not damage the finish, but if it just makes you a little bit nervous, go ahead and slide a paper towel kind of under the area you're going to be working. That way, if you do have to do a nice dousing of oil, you're not spraying it everywhere. So let's go ahead and remove our presser foot. And there's a little thumb screw here that we just turn counterclockwise to the left. And we're going to take it off of the presser bar now. And I always recommend bagging up your parts together, like parts with like parts. So I always keep my foot with my bobbin though. So I'm just going to throw it in there. Now, first we will remove this tension pin releasing lever. So our goal is to get things out of the way, and we'll remove the presser bar last. We'll remove the needle bar after the tension pin releasing lever. So starting with the tension pin releasing lever, always make sure you're working with a well-fitting screwdriver. Find the bit that fits. This, even though it looks like it would be perfect for this screw, the bit's actually too wide. And that's how we damage the heads of our screws, when we use the wrong tip. So I'm going to select the perfect fitting bit, which is this one off my Chapman set. So before we remove the tension pin releasing lever, let me explain to you what it does. If you watch when I raise the presser bar lifter, this whole part rocks forward. Now, if you watch my tension when I do that, you see that movement? So my presser bar is up. This tension pin releasing lever is pushing against the tension pin inside the assembly. It's moving it forward and taking the tension off of my tension disc, which means your foot is up, the thread pulls freely without tension, so you can remove your project from your machine. Hopefully, your machine is doing this now. If when you raise your presser bar lifter, you're not seeing movement here, don't worry, we'll fix that. But before we take it off, I just wanted to explain what that's there for. It's not a part you can leave off and never put back on. So with my well-fitting screwdriver, I'm going to put it into the head of the screw and left to loosen. And it should just come right out. And let's look here. This is a hinge screw. So the tension pin releasing lever, the screw goes in this hole right here, and the hinge part of the screw is what this rocks on and allows it to rock back and forth even though it's screwed all the way into the machine. This spring presses against the body of the machine. This metal part here is actually what hits the tension pin. So if you go to put this back in the machine and you don't see this spring hitting the tension pin, it's not supposed to. This is. So we can set this aside for now. So now we can actually work with our needle bar. We need to remove the needle clamp first. Make sure you're working over a towel. Make sure you don't have a trash can sitting under your table where if you drop a screw or something, it just rolls into the garbage or disappears under a desk, because some of the parts here are very small. We're going to remove this screw here, and it's a tiny little screw. When you see the back side, it's kind of cool looking, but this should just turn left to loosen. And it just screws right out. But be careful, because this is different than most of the screws you're going to see on the machine. Look, the back is actually just a little button, which is going to fit into a tiny little hole on the needle bar. So do not lose this, set it aside. Now you should be able to grab that needle clamp and just spin it off. And it could be stuck. That came off pretty easy, to be honest, but this machine's been sprayed. Now I have a thumb screw here, which is how I clamp the needle in. It applies the pressure to the needle and holds it in place. And then I have the rest of my needle clamp, which includes this piece here and this little jib that fits up inside, which is actually also a thread guide. It does two things. It helps clamp the needle in place, and it's a thread guide for your thread. So that's 4 little parts that you took off of the needle bar. Now we're almost ready to actually take the needle bar out of the machine, and it's going to slide right out through the top. But before we do that, we have to release this screw here on the needle bar clamp. Now, if you can see on this one, this screw head already has damage. Somebody's fiddled with it. Maybe they needed to adjust the height of the needle bar. If you do not use a screwdriver that fits, then you always risk damaging the head of the screw. So, that's nice and snug. Well, I had to let that one soak for a little bit. And because the head of the screw is just damaged enough, I actually ended up flipping the machine up on its end. So the hand wheel was down on the table. And then I used my screwdriver, and first I tapped it a little bit to maybe break any dried up varnished oil free. And then using downward pressure and turning counterclockwise, I was able to finally get the screw to turn. There's already enough damage on the head of this screw, probably a little bit more now, and I want to preserve it the best I can. So once you get it free, which is really patience and oil, you should be able to turn it counterclockwise and out it should come. And this screw has sort of a tapered head here, and then the rest is just threaded. But look at the end of this screw. I don't know if I'll be able to save it or not. I might be able to sand this down. As long as there's still enough of the groove, I can save the screw. But if not, I'll be looking for a replacement. So we have this off. Now let's look at our needle bar. The needle bar is probably going to be pretty stuck. And by turning my hand wheel, I see that it moves inside the bearing here and down through this hole out the bottom of the machine. It's not really moving left or right. I can't twist it. And, oh, there we go. So I'm just grabbing the bottom of the needle bar with my fingers and seeing if I can turn it and get it to free up, because I want it to move pretty freely before I try to slide it out of the hole here in the top. Now if you look really quickly here, do you see that little line cut in the needle bar? That's actually there to line up with this line, which helps you center the needle bar properly so that the eye of the needle is in the right position. So just a little fun fact, if you take this out and put it back, that's what that line is for. So this is pretty gunked up, and I think we're going to need another oil break. I'm just going to spray it. and let it soak. So I've taken another oil break and a coffee break, and I was thinking, you know, when I film these videos, I always want it to go super smooth and just show you really quick how to get something done. And if that always worked out, I would miss out on opportunities to show you how to handle some of the problems that you're going to run into. So I guess I should be thankful for a really gunked up kind of machine. So do you see now when I'm turning my hand wheel, all of a sudden, see the movement I'm getting here that I wasn't getting before? The needle bar is not moving, but the needle bar clamp is. So that has freed up, but I still have to pull this needle bar up and out through the machine. And I can see that there's a bunch of thread and varnished oil that's collected on the needle bar. So I'm going to actually wipe that off before I try to pull that up through the needle bar clamp. Do you see that? That's not going to help me. That's only going to hinder me. So rub off what I can before I try to go ahead and get this out, because you don't want those little bits getting stuck. Now see the movement I have? Now I think it would be wise to maybe focus on this part a little bit. So just spraying it and rubbing off some of that gunk. I'm also going to go down inside the top here, see if there's any little particles that might get trapped and make it harder for the needle bar to come out. Now I can spin my needle bar, not as freely as I would like, and it's still very stiff. I have this movement, but this is pretty stuck. And you have to get the needle bar out the top of the machine. There is no other way to do so. You do not have the clearance here at the base to slide it out the bottom. Even if you removed all of the needle plate and the feed dog and the hook and everything, it still won't come out that way. But with a little bit of patience and a lot of oil, this will come free unless it is bent. That's a different story. So I'm just going to keep twisting and turning, and I'm going to add yet even more oil. Now, while the top of the needle bar is out of the bushing totally, that's a great opportunity to oil it and clean it out. You see, I've got my Q-tip all the way down inside the bushing. But what's coming out isn't a lot. It's a little dirty, but not a lot. So I feel like that part is a-okay. And I'm just pushing up, never pulling. And there it goes. There's something to be thankful for. All the way out the top of the machine. Now, the resistance I'm getting tells me that I really want to check this needle bar to make sure it's not bent, because it slid pretty freely into this bushing until I got to this lower part. So I have some nylon tipped pliers that I can use to grab the top of this needle bar. And if you haven't figured out by now, this is a messy job. This is not a hands clean kind of job. So I'm just gripping my needle bar with the pliers, twisting and pulling. There she goes, all the way out. These are very handy. If you don't have the nylon tip and you don't want to invest in them because you don't think you would ever use them except for this one time, you can take a regular pair of pliers and say a piece of leather off of an old belt or something and kind of put that between the pliers and the needle bar and see if you can get a grip that way, and it will protect any markings being made, or protect the needle bar from any markings being made on it. So there you go. There's our needle bar. Definitely needs to be cleaned. Here's where our jib rests and our needle slides up in here. There's so much grime and stuff in here we want to get out. And this tiny little hole is the button. It's for this little button on the back of this screw that we use to secure the needle clamp. So we have our needle bar, part of the needle clamp, the thumb screw for the needle clamp. This is the needle bar clamp screw. This is the jib, part of the needle clamp. This is the little screw that secures the needle clamp to the needle bar. Now, if you look here, this part here, it should just slide out, especially now because there's so much oil on it. But this is what the needle bar slides down into. Let's put this with the needle bar. And you can set that all aside, and it's going to wait for you to clean it. The next thing that we can take off, now that the needle bar is out of the way especially, is the presser bar. And up here on the top is the thumb screw, and it just turns left counterclockwise, and you just spin it all the way out. There we go, it's this long screw. Then we can pull out the spring that fits down inside the actual presser bar. And if this is stuck, just gently pull it. I'll show you why. You can twist it a little too. There's a spring attached to this post. The spring sets down inside the actual presser bar. This can separate. If it separates, you can put it back together, but it's best if it doesn't. And look how disgusting it is. I'm just going to set that aside. Now, I want to remove this set screw here. That goes into this little guide bracket, and the set screw is what holds the presser bar in place after it's inside the guide bracket and keeps it at the right height. So this is just left to loosen also. And so much oil has been put on this machine. Hopefully no more parts are stuck. So just this little set screw. And then before we can slide the presser bar totally out, we need to deal with this thread cutter here. And just be careful when you grab it, because one part of it is actually sharp. It is a thread cutter. And you don't want to put your fingers and press on that part, but it should just twist off. Normally if I twist and pull down at the same time, I can get it to slide off the end of the presser bar. That's your thread cutter. This is the sharp end here that cuts the thread. That's why you don't want to press on that while you're trying to take it off. Now, the presser bar hopefully is loose enough to just slide right out now, and it should slide out the top. And I may need my nylon pliers again. Now that the needle bar is out, I have space that I can grab the presser bar, and I just have to try to keep a little grip here, and I'm working this, twisting it and pulling up at the same time. I do not want to ever pull on my presser bar while it's down here. I don't want to pull this way or push it. You don't want to bend your presser bar. So we're almost to the point where we can get this guide bracket out of the way, but not quite. And it's just a slow process. Be patient. And you may not even struggle like this, but it is coming up a little bit at a time. And it'll probably free up at some point where it just slides right out. There we go. Your presser bar. And here is this little guide bracket. I like to keep these all together. So what am I putting in this other bag? My presser bar. Oh, that is just full of disgusting oil. The guide bracket, thread cutter, thumb screw for the presser bar, spring for the presser bar, set screw for the presser bar. And remember our tension pin releasing lever and hinge screw, that's going to go in there as well. So those parts are out of the way and ready to clean. Next, we will go ahead and remove the thread take-up system, and that will be in the next video. If you have questions, if you get stuck, leave me a comment and I'll try to help you out as much as I can. And see you again real soon. Bye.